Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We are the Reschool'd podcast, a show that discusses all the things schools may not have prepared you for. As always, I am AJ, and sitting across me, Jason. Jason, how are you doing today?
Doing great, AJ. It's it's a Monday, so it's a slow day.
Yeah, no kidding.
Did you have a busy weekend?
Kind of. I mean, I'm still trying to get ahead so I have to do we have 2 research papers to do this semester, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to be able to do them. And so the only way I feel like I have time to do anything is if I can get ahead. And so I've been trying to bust it, try to get a couple weeks ahead on my schoolwork, but it's every time I feel like I get ahead, I start to get pulled back by other things. And we're also trying to, our house on the market, so we're trying to move some things. It's a pretty busy weekend.
Man, you do have a lot going on. School, teaching, selling your home.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise doing all of that at one time. Yeah.
Well, one thing about it, you pull the Band-Aid, you get it done. There you go.
Just get it over with. Yeah. Just get it over with. It's one of those things where when you are in school, and this is for the listeners too, if you're a student in college, it usually takes a couple weeks to find your groove. But once you find it, it just kind of gets, and you get into a system. And that's kind of where I'm at right now is I've got a system going where it allows me to get, a little bit ahead for the following week. And if I do that over a course of multiple weeks, then I get ahead quite a bit. Mm-hmm. It's not terrible right now. I'm ready for this semester to be over. I think this is going to be our worst semester for all of us. So.
Well, good. We're halfway done, so we're a little more than halfway, I believe.
We're counting down the days. There's no question. We've already discussed a party between the cohort members at the end of the semester because we're getting this semester over with. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Today's episode we are going to be talking about. Last episode we were still in that life series and we were talking about expectations versus goals. In this episode, we're going to go back to college, the College 101 series. We're going to go into. I love this one, the way it's titled, because all I can think of is, somebody in elementary school, making friends in college. It's not something you really think about because it's not something we really put a priority on probably. Because as you go into college, you probably already have friends, but you're going to meet tons of people going through from one area or another. And so we've felt it's probably a pretty good idea to talk about this a little bit more in detail, maybe to help some people as they go through. So what do you think about that?
Sounds good. It's actually top of mind because I believe I talk to my 9-year-old and 7-year-old about that daily. So,
yes. Oh, yes. Of course.
You treat others well. There you go. That type of thing. But before we do, got to remind everybody, visit us on the website, reschool'd.com. That's with a D, not an ED. Check us out on our social media profiles as well. That's one of the best ways to get in contact with us. Just drop us messages, things like that. And, of course, your favorite podcasting app. Give us all the stars you'll give us. Tell us you like us. Recommend us to friends, all that good stuff. But most importantly right now, give us some stuff to talk about. Let us know what you want to hear about, and we'll talk about it on air. So, thanks.
Absolutely. Quick question of the day. And, as I'm looking through the show doc, I'm starting to realize that I think we're going to be pulling a lot of information that we've talked about in previous episodes, like a few episodes. We're going to bring it back to this one because I think it's really interesting. But quick question of the day. Jason, did you have a lot of friends in college? Were you a social butterfly?
I did not. No, I did not have a lot of friends in college. How about you? I know the answer to that, but
I did have I did have a good group of friends. I had different types of friends. And I think it's one of the things we're going to be talking about here in this episode. I had different types of friends because I did do quite a bit of, I guess you would say, extracurricular activities. I played soccer in college. I was part of an academic, I guess you would say, team. And then I also just had my natural friends. And then I was also, again, bringing back from a past episode, I was pretty close to the fraternities on my campus. I wasn't in a fraternity, but I hung out with a lot of people within the fraternity. So when I have a friend in a fraternity and I go to the party with that friend, then I'm going to meet new people. And then the more I go to that fraternity house or whatever, the closer I get with those people. So I did have quite a few friends, but I had a few strong friends, ones that I talked to regularly. I did things I can count on, those kind of things. So I would say I had a good mixture of friends, and I did have, quite a few friends.
So I can say I did have a few like really good close friends. My brother was always around. We went to the same college, and my best friend from high school went to the same college. So there was that built-in dynamic. But other than that, I had a couple of really good friends, and that's it. Everybody else was just, there were people I would hang out with every now and then, but not people I would definitely say these weren't people that I could call up at the spur of the moment, middle of the night, hey, come help me move, right?
Yeah,
type scenario. So they were very much just, we'd hang around sometimes and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people are like that, right? You're going to have your core group that you can go to, and then everybody else is far more superficial. So.
Yeah, and I think looking back, I had an interesting situation too, because I didn't have a whole lot of friends in high school. Like I wasn't the social butterfly in high school. I didn't fall in with the cliques. I kind of did my own thing. I went, every high school has the groups and stuff. I kind of, floated around the groups. I was friendly with everyone, but I wasn't really close with a single group. Most, especially in my senior year and partly in my junior year, because I was able to drive those years. I hung out more with college students in those 2 years of high school. So that's why I had more friends going into college, is because I was kind of already part of those groups in college. And that obviously led to more opportunities to get more friends when you hang out with, like I said, fraternities and stuff like that too. So that's kind of, I think, where mine came from.
Now that makes sense, but it kind of begs the very first question that we're going to ask for today. Should you even care? I mean, it doesn't, to you, and I want your opinion on this, does it matter at all if you have a lot of friends versus a few friends versus, no friends?
It was important for me to have friends, but the quantity wasn't the focus to me. Like having tons of friends, they have that thing where you say, okay, you have a few best friends, like really, really just, one or two, what you would consider best friends. Then you would have a few more friends that you can count on. And then you have more acquaintances, people that you're friendly with. You joke around. They know you when you talk to each other, if you see them out in public or whatever, but it's not somebody that you're probably going to hang around with. And that's probably where most of mine fell into, was the acquaintances, because, again, I played soccer. So everybody on the team, especially during the season, we were really close. But outside of the season, we kind of all did our own things. The friends, I had a handful of really, really, really close, what we'd consider, I guess you'd say, best friends. I had very few of those. And then I had, a little bit more friends. So should you care about having a lot of friends? No, I didn't care about it, but I did care about having a few really good ones. The ones that I can count on, ones that I could do stuff with. If they were doing something, they'd invite me. If I was doing something, I'd invite them. It gave me something to do where I wasn't just sitting at home alone, bored out of my mind, probably having to do homework. So what about you? Did you care a lot about having the friends that you had?
So I wanted to be part of groups and things like that. I wanted to, and it seemed like everything had its clique, whether it was the sports or whether it was the folks who did, whatever, fun activity you can think of. They just had those groups, and I always wanted to be part of any one of them. So I wanted for people in those groups to like me and things like that, but I don't know that I put a ton of effort into that. See, luckily, I had one best friend my entire life who just seemed to always be there, the same one that went to college with me and my brother. And so, and then other than that, I had a small group of folks that I would hang out with regularly. I had at different points, and I had one good friend, other good friend. And between that, no, I didn't try much harder. It just wasn't important to me. I think we're probably going to talk a little bit about the whole introvert extrovert thing. And I would, by most classifications, say I'm an introvert, but not a severe one. I've learned to be sociable in that way. There are certainly scales or people on different ends of that spectrum, right? My wife being an extreme extrovert, she actually, you know, I've heard it described as an extrovert gets energy from interactions with other people. An introvert might get energy from interactions with a select group of people, but people with whom they don't have a familiarity, a deep familiarity, a deep level of comfort, it exhausts them. And that's me, right? It exhausts me to be around people that I don't have a deep level of comfort with. Not extremely, right? I would always go to parties. I had a bunch of people, that I was acquaintances with that knew me wherever I'd go and things like that. But I wouldn't call them, once again, extreme friends. And I've pretty much grown apart from basically every group of friends I've ever had in my life, except for my best friend and my brother. So,
yeah, it's hard for me because looking back in college and in high school, but more so in college, like my mind, one, because ADHD is just, your mind's always racing. I always felt like I had to have something to do. Like I had to have something to do. I could not stay at home. I was never home. And having friends that were having multiple friends allowed me multiple things to do at any given night. And I would go through phases. Like I would go through, this is where I would go to I would have a season of my life where I went to fraternity parties more. And I wasn't a partier. Like I wasn't the one who just drunk as all get out at these parties. I just would go there and hang out. I wouldn't drink. I think I only drank one time at a party. But I would also have times where it was in soccer season. So I was more hanging out with the athletes because the soccer guys would hang out with obviously the soccer girls, the volleyball girls, baseball guys. We would all kind of hang out together. So that was one season of my life too. But then there was a season, I look back now, there was probably a good year of my life where my nights were consumed by playing poker. There was a group of people in the town, and there was probably 20 people in town that every night, except they said 7 nights or 6 nights of the week, they would be playing poker somewhere around our town. And why they took one day off, why they said they took one day off, was, I guess, because they were looking at it. Well, we're not going to play poker on Sunday, just give you a day rest. But inevitably somebody would call up and say, hey, we're getting a game together. Let's go play. And I did that, like I said, 5-6 times a week, to go play poker if nothing was going on.
That's incredible. 5 or 6 nights a week through college.
Oh man, it was, and I wouldn't get home until 3 or 4 in the morning. We would have a significant amount of money on the table. Because it was, for us, it was $20 buy-ins, and you can buy in as many times as you want. And we had tons of people there, and it would go all night.
How in the world did you pass your college classes devoting that amount of time to playing poker?
But it's funny you say that. And I know we're getting off on a tangent, but it's so funny you say that because I do think part of the time that we played poker kind of helped your mind a little bit. It kind of worked with your mind and worked it out because you're always thinking of a different way of doing something. You're always thinking of strategy. And so you're always trying to read people. So you can take that and put it into some of your classes, and you get stuff out of it as well. So you start to play the game within the classroom setting. So, but yeah, that was part of it. So yeah, I was way more of an extrovert then. Now looking at me now, I guess because 1, I'm older, and 2, I have a family, and my wife is very introverted, I would say. I'm starting to get more towards that introvert side. Like I guess you would say I'm more of an introverted extrovert. Or I think they call it an omnivert, but I think that's a technical word. But no, yeah, I definitely see how extrovert and introvert can play into this topic quite a bit.
You know what they say, you're going to assimilate to whoever you're around. I think I've gone the opposite direction. I've become more social because my wife is so social.
Oh yeah, you meet in the middle.
Yeah, Absolutely. And in a way, I think maybe she's become just a slight bit less social, but that's still on the far end of the spectrum.
Oh yeah, well,
Talk to anybody, always wants to be around people.
Yeah, my wife was never one that was. She really never went to parties, especially in college. She had never gone to a concert until after we got married. She never touched a drop of alcohol until we started dating. And
oh wow,
yeah, and now she's more out wanting to go to concerts. She loves live music. We're supposed to be going to a concert in the beginning of next year sometime. We've already got the tickets for that. She likes to go to when we go to the beach, there's a bar down there that has live music. So she loves going down there, and she'll get out on the dance floor and dance. She loves doing that stuff. So she's getting more of that side of where I used to be. So again, we're both meeting kind of in the middle, or coming closer to the middle.
That's good. You build each other up.
Yeah.
Hey, that's good.
All right. Question. Would you say there are different types of friendships?
Well, absolutely. I mean, every friendship, and my thing is I've always categorized it for what part of life, and what their function was. Like you said, with your sports teams and different things like that, I always had friends around different interests, right? In high school, I loved playing tennis.
Mm-hmm.
So while I had the same best friend my entire life, I had another extremely good friend in high school. I would go over to his house every day right after school. That, I was always on a sports team of some sort, and we had seasons. But even during those seasons, before practice or after practice, I would go over to his house, and he had a tennis court in his backyard, and we would play tennis until the night, right? He actually became pretty famous. His name's Aziz Ansari, the comedian.
Yeah.
I think I've told you that before.
Yep.
But anyway, he and I were from the same town, and he was a good tennis player. He took lessons really early on, so he basically taught me how to play. And so I spent all that time over there, and we grew apart later. We didn't have cell phones back then, and he left our school and went to a different private school in the state before he went on to college. And then not having cell phones, you couldn't text back then. I don't think I even had an email account till I was in college. So, we quickly lost touch. But during that time, he was, an extremely good friend, but something about, the nature of our friendship, and we had different interests and things like that outside of that common interest of tennis. So I would definitely say there are types of friends that tend to relate to what you do. Yeah. So, I mean, that's my simplest answer. What do you think?
Yeah, there's obviously, to me, there's different types. And I think you brought up a really interesting point, because, like I said, I've had really close friends, what would be considered best friends, but even then they start to, they occur at different points of my life. And I've started to learn, like, a lot of it has to do with, I wouldn't say losing best friends, because I can always call them, but the lack of communication because of the distance that has grown between us. And I say distance, I mean physical distance. Like, they moved away. Mm-hmm. So I don't get to see them all the time. And I'm the world's worst when it comes to texting or calling or keeping up if I don't see you all the time.
Yeah.
And I start, obviously we start to grow further apart, because obviously our lives are going in different directions, physically, as well as career-wise and stuff like that, and family. And so, I mean, my closest friend in college, I haven't talked to them in a while. I know I can call them tomorrow, and it'd be just like, exactly where we left off. But it's one of those things that we're in a different place in our life now, and physically we're in a different location. And this was a person that I practically lived at his place while I was living at my own house. I was living at his place because we were always doing something. We were always getting into something, doing something, having fun. But it's just that physical distance that started to kind of make us, I guess you'd say, grow apart. But yeah, there are obviously different types of friendships. Like you're going to have, like, for me, I had my soccer friends. When season came around, we were a close group of people. When I was part of the academic, the college team, the business school team, they were really close, and we did a whole lot of stuff together. Internationally, we would go on trips and stuff. Right now, I have close friends that I was working out with. So I have a really good buddy of mine here in town that I used to work out with prior to me going to get back into school. But our families do quite a bit together because our kids are so close in age. And then I also have a really, really close group of friends that I work at the camp with every summer. And we call each other family. Like we all work really, really close together. And if you talk about a family reunion, that's our family reunion is the camp, because we get to see each other during that time.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I was going to ask you, it seems to me that lots of people have friends related to purpose, right? Yeah. And, in your situation, friends related to a team and stuff like that, that's something you're doing and organized for. But a friend that's primarily related because you work out together, or a friend that's primarily there because you have kids that are the same age, or, that type of thing. So, almost in a way, you become friends out of necessity.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have that commonality anyway. Yeah.
And I would say it was more, especially now in the time we're at in our lives, we're out of college. It was more organic. It wasn't like, oh, I'm in college, I need to find friends to find something to do. I was just working out, and he was working out, and he knew my wife because they both work for the city. That's why I was at the gym, is because they give them the membership if you're a city employee. And they were all talking, and we just kind of struck up a conversation. And then we found out our daughters, our kids were the same age. And we just kind of started hanging out. They went to the same school and all that kind of stuff. So we started hanging out as families, and then it just kind of grew. My wife and his wife got to be really close. So yeah. And then even now, I mean, my program, the doctoral program that I'm in right now, we have our cohort members that we've been in from the beginning. And we honestly, I mean, and this is a very, very loose example or relationship, because we understand that we're not even close to it. But it is kind of like, when you go through basic training, you get close to the people that you went through hell with, because you made it through it together. And I have some really close friends in that program as well. Like, they're people, I text the people in that program. There's two students in that program I text more than I text anybody, because we're always talking about the program, but we're also talking about each other's families, seeing how they're doing, because we know what kind of pain they're going through. So that's got us close too.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to talk about in terms of friends, is the idea that most people connect with other people because they believe they're understood. So I tell my girls, I tell my students, if you want to be liked, or at least received well, listen, don't talk. And the next step would be to inquire about other people. Be proactive. Have conversations where you intentionally don't say I or me, right? And you will naturally find yourself simply asking questions about the other person and listening to them. And that endears people to you more quickly than just about anything you can do. We all want to be understood. So it's funny, you would think that we feel more comfortable once we understand somebody else, but we're actually more comfortable when other people understand us, right? So when you have somebody else who listens to you fully, who asks you questions and things like that, you immediately feel understood, even if you don't know that much about them. Now, most people, when you're talking about yourself, you're giving somebody else information, you'll reciprocate, right? You'll ask those questions back. So there's this exchange of information, but not always. But at least most of the research has found that once somebody feels understood, that's when the trust bond starts to form, because that's the combination of interests, values, and beliefs, right? It helps you, one, you've communicated the interest, but you start to get down to the underlying beliefs and values, right? That type of thing. So that being said, the experiences that you have with somebody, how you become friends, right, helps you understand that person. So it kind of has the exact same effect as being proactive and just asking someone questions, listening to them in that way, and having them, endear themselves to you because of that. Rather, you both go through something, you both see something, you have that common bond, and that common bond leads to, once again, understanding. Our tendency to gravitate towards people like us is part of that implicit bias thing that we all have, right? We look for someone who, again, has these commonalities because, once again, we don't have to explain ourselves, and communication is so much easier. So that's an interesting thing too, how you become friends and why. But normally there's one common characteristic across the board there when you have good friends. You feel like you understand them fully and they feel like they understand you. Right?
Yeah. You're talking about you telling your girls, to listen. It reminded me of that quote from, I love the TV show. Have you ever seen Ted Lasso?
Yes.
Oh, I love that show. And that really, it was a heavy point, which was one of the coolest moments in there. But he was talking about the whole, and it's not Walt Whitman who said this, but they credited Walt Whitman for saying this, but he said, be curious, not judgmental. And I thought that's such a good quote for whoever said it. But I've always loved that quote because it's ask questions, don't just assume. But at the same time, listen for the answers to the questions that you ask as well. I love that quote. All right. So do friends in college tend to stay friends after college?
By and large, no.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Most people move on to different phases of their life. I mean, college is a transition. You have people in there because you're in the same major, you're in the same classes, you're in the same dorm, you're on the same campus, that type of thing. But every one of those factors changes, and everyone moves back on. And college tends to be where people come together and from different walks of life, and that's the wonderful thing about college. It exposes you to so much. You get this diversity of opinion, viewpoint, the way their culture, the way people were brought up. But after that, people tend to gravitate back towards that or towards something else. You leave, you get jobs elsewhere. You get, you tend to, develop new interests. You usually meet someone and oftentimes have a family, that type of thing. So all of these things are factors that take away the commonalities that you have with somebody else, right? Because you're not in the same school system anymore. You're not taking the same classes. You're not working together. You're not doing all these things. So people naturally tend to drift apart. I mean, It's just, it happens.
Yeah, I agree. There's again, I said earlier, the physical distance between parties will have an effect. I had a good friend in college tell me one time that, if you take your best friend in college, when at the time that you get married, your spouse replaces that best friend. Which makes sense because you're talking about you're becoming one with that person that you're marrying. That person lives with you, and they spend more or less almost every minute with you outside of the normal stuff. And I kind of understood that until, I kind of assumed that until I got married, and then it made a whole lot more sense. And when it comes to really, really close friends, like I guess you would say, like, again, best friends, the quantity that you can have of best friends, I think, is correlated with time. Because obviously, when you're talking about best friends, you're talking about people that you're going to be talking to a lot, hanging out with a lot. If you have a lot of them, to maintain that best friend, you got to have a lot of time. And when you get older and out of college and you have families, that time goes down. So you don't have as much time. So I think, to me, based on that, I guess, prediction, is the older you get, the more it turns to quality than quantity, because we don't have as much time. We have, kids' sports and kids' hobbies and spouses and all these kind of things. So then it turns more into the importance of quality than quantity.
I agree. I could not agree more. Which, with that being said, let's give the folks some tips. What are what are some things, like when you're going to school, you know, you're meeting new people for the first time, what are some tips you can throw out there for how to make friends?
Well, first and foremost to me, and I'm trying to tell this to my son now, that is, be selective on who your inner circle of friends are, the closest friends that you have. Be selective, because you are a representation of what that group does. If one friend does something really stupid, then you're going to be guilty by association. And so you have to be really, really selective. But those friends can really have a significant impact, a positive impact on your life as well. So that's why you want to be selective. So my first tip would be just be selective. What about you?
That's great. Mine is more for the networking, I guess, thing. Listen. Try not to speak, right? If your objective is to get to know someone and to make friends with them, ask them questions about themselves. And that's not as easy as it sounds. You really have to practice conversational techniques, right? Being able to break the ice with someone, being able to establish rapport by asking them questions about themselves. And if you don't practice that, if you don't naturally go about where you can ask questions that lead to another question, right, that allow people to continue talking type scenario. And then on the exchange, be practiced well enough to respond back to them when they reciprocate, when they ask you the same question, right? But always end the answer to their question with, like I say, something back on them where you can show you're still interested in them and you want to continue to hear from them, that type of thing. So yeah, listen. that's number one.
Mine piggybacks on kind of what you were saying, and that is, make sure you give as much as you receive when it comes to friendship. I mean, it's a give and take. So if you're always waiting on that person to call, or you're always relying on that person, but you're never doing anything to help that person, or you're never inviting that person, you're never making the initiative to just call that person, then it's very selfish. I mean, it's very selfish in aspect of the relationship. And marriage is a relationship. So if you're going to be like that to somebody that you consider a very close friend, then you're probably going to do the same thing in your marriage. So I would almost say go ahead and practice that too. But you want to be equal in the friendship. You don't want to always be one-sided and be selfish. So that would be my next tip.
Yeah, I'm going to keep going down that line and say you got to prioritize the time, because friendship in whatever form, right, takes some level of effort. Yeah, have to invest yourself in it to some extent. Now, not all friendships require the same amount of time. Some, obviously, like a intimate relationship you have with a spouse or something like that, that's different, right? You have to invest a ton more time, right? Yeah. And there's to a different degree. But for the most part, you have to make certain that you're putting into the friendship what you hope to get out of it, right? So you set aside the time, you set aside the effort, you remember things about people. Okay. So that type of thing.
I think my last one would be, don't be afraid to cut bait when you have to. I think that's probably one of the harder ones for people to do, is when their friend does something that they don't necessarily agree with. And it may not be to them, but just from a moral or ethical standpoint, if they continuously do something like that, and it doesn't agree with your standards that you've set for yourself, then from a self-preservation perspective, it's not a bad thing to cut bait. Because you're looking out for yourself. Again, especially we're talking about in college. Again, we've already said that you tend not to stay friends with those, as many people in college, maybe one or two tops, but close friends, you're not going to stay really close with that you had in college. And if they're going to have a negative impact on your life, whether it be through image or bad decision-making or whatever, then it's not a bad thing for you to look out for yourself and just drop the friendship. I mean, obviously, and when I say that, I'm not saying like they did one thing that you didn't agree with and you say, all right, that's it. The communication side is important too, because part of being a friendship is if they're doing something that you don't agree with, communicate with them first.
Mm-hmm.
See where they're at. If they didn't realize it and they want to work on it, great. You've just helped that person. That's part of being a friend. But if they keep doing the same act over and over and over again with no, worry for repercussions or anything like that, then that's probably something that you don't want to have to deal with in your life because you don't want that negativity. So at that moment, that's when I would say cut it. So.
No, that makes sense. I couldn't agree more. I think that's a good final closing point. You prioritize the people that mean the most in your life. They'll stay your friends long term. Invest your time because time is finite. And there you go.
Yeah.
Right. And we do know one thing, right? From that longest running study in history at Harvard, they often call it the happiness study, but it's a little deeper than that. It's more about contentment in life and longevity of life and things like that. The one consistent factor that has been shown to make you more content later in life and to live longer is not breadth, but depth of relationship. So you have a few close people that mean a ton in your life, right? And there you go. That's the secret to, I guess, the fountain of youth.
There you go. Well, that's an interesting point. And it's been an interesting episode. When I saw this about making friends, like I said, I thought about it, my kids.
Yeah, but, that's what I thought too.
But do you have any parting words before we head out?
Yeah, just remind everybody, we're talking about the things you want to hear about. That's kind of how we got down this live series. So with that being said, keep it coming. Let us know what you want to hear about. And we're more than happy to talk about it on air.
Awesome. Well, we hope you all enjoyed the show. And until next time, we hope to see you there. Goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to Reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.